Thanks for tuning into the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with another rewind edition of my podcast, and today I will be rewinding the Carter 3 by Lil Wayne. Now, this album changed everything in hip hop, especially from a commercial standpoint. The way they looked at hip hop, the way they gauged hip hop, what they thought hip hop could do, they underestimated, at least from a standpoint of this album and what potentially it could be. So I think this was around the time of 2008. So you have to think about the time period and everything that happened prior to. So hip hop was seen as a project of something that could potentially grow, but they didn't know the potential of as far as success could go. There's been many successful albums prior to this album, but what it did impact wise and what it did culturally. And I'll kind of talk about everything that led up to this album that made it so successful. Like I said, this is Lil Wayne's sixth album, and it was his most successful and arguably his best. I think it's his best. You know, some people want to say maybe the Carter 1, the Carter 2, but commercially successful. This was definitely the most successful, no doubt. But from a lyrical standpoint and everything that led up to this album, I think made it the best album in his catalog. And one of the best albums of hip hop history, probably top 10, if you want to put it against against the greats, like the Nas's and the Jay-Z's and the Biggies and Tupac's and things like that. But like I talked about previously, leading up to this album, there was a 3-year hiatus between Carter 2 and Carter 3. And when Lil Wayne before he came out with the Carter 3, there was a lot of anticipation leading up to the album. When you think about all of the features that he had, the features that he was featured on, all of the songs that he put out in mixtapes as well. Now, he put out a lot of music. So the consensus was, is he going to run out of gas? Similar to an athlete that runs around all day and then overtime, how much do you have left in the tank? Lil Wayne was still able to put one of the best works in hip hop together, even though the thousands of or hundreds of verses that he put out before this album. In the Carter 2, he declared himself the best rapper alive. He had yet to truly prove that, but between the Carter 2 and the Carter 3, he proved that. And really, when the Carter 3 came out, it solidified him as one of the greats. Even having a feature on the song, on one of his songs featuring Jay-Z, which I'll talk about briefly in a little bit. But I think the anticipation of this album, like I said, between Carter 2 and Carter 3 and all the work that he put up for free, mostly with the mixtapes and things like that, he invested in himself heavily. And they talk about that a lot. You know, you invest you get back what you invest in. And he did a lot of that from just the features. He was on everybody's song, whether it be a pop, country, rap, R&B. He was all over the place, and every verse was prolific. He didn't put out any trash. He didn't put out any mediocre verses. Everything was high quality, and that's what you have to commend Lil Wayne for during this time period. And now this album sold over 1 million copies in the first week. It went on, according to, well, I guess updated as far as 2020, it's sold 6 times, went 6 times platinum. A very difficult feat to do. Not a lot of artists have done that, especially selling 1 million in the first week. That's like Taylor Swift type numbers. But he was doing this back in 2008, back when there was no precedent for it. There weren't a lot of artists, especially hip hop artists, doing that. And it changed the trajectory of everything. People started looking at the numbers more. A lot of people say that 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying did that as well. But I think from a realism standpoint, a lot of people started relating to Lil Wayne because, he had that work ethic and he was able to be relatable. Having a 5'6" guy, looked normal, didn't have muscles, he didn't look like 50 Cent. He was more relatable. It's similar to the Steph Curry, LeBron James theory. A lot of people think they can be Steph Curry because, he's this slender guy. He might be 6'3", but it's very difficult, or it's not a lot of people that's 6'8", 240 pounds that could jump out of the gym like a LeBron James. Steph Curry is more relatable. So that's why Lil Wayne was a little bit more relatable, I think, than what a 50 Cent did. More people can see themselves in the shoes of a Lil Wayne. And plus, he was more ingratiated with the culture. Now, you had a prime Lil Wayne on this album, and the prime or his peak or what his ceiling was, because after this album, he started to come back down to reality. He became more human because he called himself a Martian around this time, and he was Martian-like from what he was doing. The lead single on this album, Lollipop, was one of the first songs I can remember in hip hop that I loved off the jump. I didn't need a second listen. I didn't need to listen to it in a certain setting. No matter where you heard Lollipop, it was a hit single, partially written by Static Major. Rest in peace to Static Major. He was in a group called Player back in the day. Very good lyricist and very good vocalist as well. But that single set everything off. And then you think about a song like A Milli, which is a classic hit. And it's a very difficult song to rap on just from the sample that's in it and how fast the beat is and the cadence. It's very difficult to rap on that song, and I haven't seen too many people, emulate that song or do any kind of freestyle to it because it's very difficult to rap to. And Lil Wayne, with his amount of time in the rap game and all the things that he's learned from the Cash Money days and so forth, he was able to rap on his beat just off his experience. It's only a few rappers that could do so. Three-Peat, which was the intro. Um, it was a very good intro, and it set the tone for the album, I believe. Short, sweet, to the point, maestro beat. People underestimate the importance of an intro. Now, back in the CD days, or the cassette days, the intro would set the tone. And because really, when you think about cassettes, you didn't have any skips unless you were fast forwarding it. So you really had to sit with the music for the most part. So the intro set the tone for everything. The intro was the attention grabber, is what they call in the English class back when you were in school. They want, you have to give that first sentence it has to grab the audience's imagination or captivate the audience to want to read more. And that's what the intro is supposed to do in music, but it's been underrated lately, and most people just play like a short musical clip or something in the intro, but the intro sets the tone. When you think about a Meek Mill's Dreams and Nightmares, one of the best, or if not the best, intros in hip-hop history, it set the tone for the album. Pretty much set the tone for everything. When you have a song like that good, people are going to listen to the album, your stream's going to go crazy. Or back in the day, your album sales would have ranked crazy just off of that. But just getting back to Lil Wayne, another song I liked on the album was You Ain't Got Nothing with Juelz Santana and Fabulous. I think that was some of the best collaborative rapping that he had on this album. Very good bars, very good chemistry between the three. Three of the best lyricists at the time. Now it's a lot different in the game, but back then they were the three best in that '08 period, and all those rappers were on fire. When you think about it, Juelz Santana, Fabulous, and Lil Wayne. Comfortable is probably a song that crossed over the most because of the babyface aspect, the singing on it. Lil Wayne was a lot soft-spoken than the rest of the album for the most part, unless you want to talk about Tie My Hands with Robin Thicke. But the Comfortable song, it was composed the best. It was smooth. It was almost like, it was poetry in motion, but it was almost like jazz, so to speak. It's a song that you can listen to around anybody. And it was very relatable because it talked about relationships as well. Very different from the rest of the album. And then, like I talked about earlier, Mr. Carter with Jay-Z, classic song. The production sounded like black superhero music. And Jay-Z talked about passing the torch to Lil Wayne on this song. And it was very symbolic because we know Jay-Z doesn't take props lightly. If he gives you your props, that means you really was doing your thing. And the work that Lil Wayne had put in, Jay-Z saw it, and he became he noticed what he was doing at the time, because he was going on this monumental run. Let the Beat Build, which was one of my favorite beats on the album, or was the favorite beat on my album. It's another one of those songs that's very difficult to rap on. It's one of those Kanye West beats, and the sample, sometimes with the sample, it overshadows the rapping, but for some reason, it didn't do that in this sense. It was a perfect mix. But the production that Kanye West had back in the day, It was flawless, the way he could engineer things and the way he produces things. And it was very meticulous, like a lot of the great producers are. Um, and then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the effect of the Dr. Carter song. So it's a Swiss Beats, of course. This song embodied hip hop because it talked about being prideful in your work in hip hop. And the theme for the song was Lil Wayne was a doctor, and the nurse would come out and tell him what was wrong with this rapper, and he would rap about what he need to fix and how he need to fix it. It was very symbolic from a standpoint of having a theme song like that, because it's not often in hip hop that they have these theme songs or even themes albums for that matter. I love the concept albums, but having a song with a conceptual basis on it was very unique, and it showed that he, put pride in his work, and he really cared about the craft, which is hip hop. He wasn't just putting out something; he really had a message behind it. And this probably was his most intricate album, just for the fact of he had a message in it about the pride in hip hop. But also, this was after Hurricane Katrina, so he's very passionate about the lack of resources that New Orleans had, and he was also passionate about being the best at what he did. Because nowadays, a lot of people don't take pride in their work, whether you're an artist or a barber or a hairstylist, or you're just doing whatever you do. There's not a lot of pride in what people do now. It's more about the money or the check. But back then in '08, it was more pride in what you did, because they did it for the love of the game. They didn't even know about the money until after. But now, you know about the money up front and what it could do for you. But when you genuinely have something that gets you up, wake you up in the morning, and you're excited to do it, and that's when you're living your true purpose. And it feels like Lil Wayne was in his stride, or living in his purpose doing this album. Like I said, this was one of the greatest albums in hip hop in the genre, and just period, I think. And it had a lot of range, from a soft standpoint to a street standpoint, to just having messages. It had a lot of different subliminals, and it had a lot of different contextual or conceptual things involved with this album. And it's one of the most influential albums, I think, of all time. And when you think about this from a historical perspective, Lil Wayne came a long way from the Cash Money days when he was just rapping about just street stuff, but to actually having a message in his music. So he evolved at this album, and it actually showed the growth of his and maturation of his artistic ability. So I'm pretty sure you already heard Lil Wayne's Carter 3, but if you want to get another listen, I gave it another listen all this week. It didn't change. I listened to it different than I did back in '08, back in my college days. So thanks for tuning into the Urban Scope podcast. And until next time, I'll see you next time.